As you're settling down to your fictitious 5 minutes, I found the prize from yesterday.
So are there enough for each month?
I think there are. It's chocolate-covered hazelnuts from Oregon. The other thing is I made another poster because I'm really into this poster thing. It's called Assignments for Committee Members. And I don't know what Nicholas and I have done wrong because there's only 2 assignments that I'm going to write down. One is to get your comments on, your first set of comments on Rosemary's slides to her in the next week or so. And the other one is to review the website. And did you have a time on that, or did you just want it to happen?
I'll get a time frame back from the developers.
Yeah, okay. So I'm going to put those up, and if you're really smart, you'll avoid having any other assignments, but...
Well, I'm a just-in-time production guy, so give me a month, I'll take a month.
Oh, right, yeah.
With respect to the presentation yesterday, I wanted to let you know that we posted on the city website. So if you go to City Council and then committees, the Water Supply Advisory Committee is listed there, not under advisory bodies, which is a little odd, but nevertheless, that's where it is. You'll see that this presentation is posted there because the other website isn't working. And I made a couple of changes based on our conversation yesterday. I changed the mislabeled units on those slides. I added, one of the people in the audience yesterday asked me about the slide that had the variable rain, or the acre feet of runoff. They were saying that, why is that an acre feet? Everything else is in millions of gallons. And so I didn't change all the data, but I changed the, I gave a factor, a conversion factor for acre feet to millions of gallons. And then on slide 78, I believe, it's the one on the price elasticities. At like 1:30 in the morning, I realized I'd made a calculation error. And and I corrected it. So the amount of, this thing says that actual rates for the period 2004 to 2008 more than doubled to 213%. That was wrong. It's 113%. And that change makes the price elasticity for that rate increase go to minus 0.08 instead of, so I corrected that. I apologize. But this is posted now, and when we get our website up, then it will be posted for you. But it's already posted up onto the city website. No, it's if you go to the tab under the city's external internet site, and you go to City Council, and then there's a thing that said committees, council committees, and if you go under council committees, and then it will show the Water Supply Advisory Committee, click there, and it's posted on that page. Eileen? It's on the meetings and agenda. Meetings and agenda, yeah. Yeah.
It's at the very bottom.
Would
Keep
someone
going.
Would someone be kind enough to just email a link to the committee of just a cut and paste a link?
Yeah.
Thank you, Clark.
Okay. Thank you for coming back so promptly. That was pretty good. Carrie reckons that nobody can really have a break shorter than 20 minutes, but you broke the record.
Once again, you surprised me.
So what we want to talk about now is outreach. There are a couple of things that I wanted to get out of this session for you. One was an understanding of the city's outreach plans so far, and that will not take long for a reason I'll explain in a moment. And the other is agreement on whether or not you want to have an outreach subcommittee. So I think that some of this discussion is going to be about, so how important is outreach for us, how complex is it, and all that kind of thing. So let me start out by saying, Keith is right here, and so he can answer questions if necessary, but what he asked me to say was, he's only been here 6 weeks, so really there isn't anything to speak of in place But if you have questions about what the city's outreach plans are at the moment, he can answer questions.
I'm a former TV reporter, so I just like to grab the microphone. Sorry, Nicholas. No, I just wanted to mention, it's right, I have only been here 6 weeks, but I just wanted to mention part of my job in coming on in the city in this position, it's a new position for the city, one that I've done in other cities, is to assess what we do for communications right now, what tools we have for outreach in general, beyond this issue. And there's a lot of things we don't have that we should have. Basic things like citizen newsletters, more of a strategic presence on the internet. I mean, the list goes on and on. So as I'm new in assessing what we need to be doing for outreach, this will also be the time where I can work with you, and this issue can be one of the first issues that we start to channel through our new communication techniques that I start to develop over the next few months. So I just ask for your patience as I kind of learn my way about the ways of Santa Cruz and what we're doing and how we can get the word out about this issue. We're working closely with Eileen, of course, in the water department does a great job, and we do have the resources of the city manager's office, behind this issue, realizing this is an important issue. So, thank you.
Thank you, Keith. So I think probably the way to start out. Wow, no man's land in between those two things. So the way to start out is to ask if this is significant enough so that you want a subcommittee, and if so, why is it significant? Does anybody want to speak to that? Erica.
I think we all know it's important enough, obviously. I mean, that's a big part of our job, I think, as given by the city. We obviously have to communicate with the public, because otherwise we won't be effective.
Thank you. I was thinking as Carrie was discussing with you the question of scenarios, that this is so difficult. It's like, this is really a challenge for us. So think of how challenging it is for somebody who didn't spend an hour listening to Rosemary yesterday. It's very difficult. Peter.
I want to go one step deeper, because we are going to make assumption on risk tolerance for Santa Cruz and on the values. And so if we don't communicate what we are basing our work on here during the process very extensively, in the end we might hit a wall that says, well, I don't want to cut back my shower, I mean, come to the city council and what do you mean? Or lawns, whatever we feel. And so, yeah, I think it's important as we go along.
Does anybody have any doubts about the need for a subcommittee on this? So it looks like, can I say that you all agree that you need a subcommittee?
Yes.
Then where we need to go with that is, there are the questions. What are the 5 questions? We need to decide what charge you would give the subcommittee. And I think structurally, is this something, for example, if we call this the Recon Outreach Subcommittee, recognizing that the roles of outreach may be quite distinct between the Recon phase and the Real Deal phase, you may be able to duck all the formality that comes at you with the Brown Act by being a temporary subcommittee. So bear that in mind, and then think, what's the scope that you want to give this, of the responsibility that you want to give this subcommittee? Would anybody like to step up to that?
I think during the recon period, most of the communication is going to be very general. It's going to be about the kinds of processes we're involved in, the kinds of questions we're asking, that we're on the case, the things we're taking into consideration, which is very different kind of an issue than we have decided this is a number for this or a range for this and this is another. So I think it's permissible legally at this point to have them be separate, because it's going to be a different kind of job to start reporting. Here's what we've decided and why we came to this conclusion, and to bring people with us to that decision before we go to our next decision in the Real Deal period. That's not going to be the form of this recon period. It's much more, here's what we're talking about, here's the things we're looking at, we're on the job, here's what, we're taking these kinds of things into consideration. Please contact us if you have other concerns. It's much more reaching out to people. We're at work, please let us get a hold of us. That's very different than what you're going to do in the Real Deal when you want to report decisions that you want people to agree with along with us before we move. It's an iterative process before you move to the next one based on that first decision. So I think we could do it as separate groups. I also think that you might want different people enjoy doing those different kinds of things. One's kind of a general assurance and engagement process, and the other is really reporting. How do you report technically difficult and complex questions to the public is very different than what's going on in the recon period.
I can feel the hungry hand of the reporter behind me. Let me give them the microphone.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I just want to add, I think that's right. I mean, so for instance, yesterday, we had the Santa Cruz Sentinel here covering the meeting, and I think Eileen said there's going to be a story this weekend, right? Okay, a story this weekend about, probably that's right, generally talking about the mission and what's going on. I talked to KGO Channel 7 in San Francisco yesterday, and we were talking about various news issues right now, and this came up. And long story short, she basically said toward the end of the call, okay, well, let me know when they decide something, talking about this group. So, you know what I mean? So I think we have to be aware that, quote-unquote, outreach through certain channels will be later in the process. Then it just depends on the audience we're dealing with. So just thought I'd make that point. I think there's interest in what we're doing. I know there's interest, and there would be media interest in what we're doing, but particularly when the media, I think it'll be later in the process, with the exception of the Sentinel.
We should perhaps put out a press release of the agreements that you've reached in the last. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, just in terms of roles of the committee, I mean, this strategy and alternatives convention, I think you all had in mind that would be part of the role of the committee, right?
That'll have an outreach component as well. It probably will need its own subcommittee.
Its own subcommittee.
I think so.
Okay.
It's going to be a ton of work.
Okay.
Well,
and another idea then for the outreach committee that we're talking about now would be to, figure out what parts of our agenda might really be most appealing for the public, and then to get the word out about those. And I'm thinking in particular, when we have presenters, that might be really most interesting.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. David. Oh, Carrie.
Well, David, committee members can go.
Okay.
The whole idea of outreach and how we do it is something that I feel very frustrated about, in the sense that the idea is that we're supposed to be engaging in, leading, and sharing a community discussion about our water supply situation, and that's with a community that we have what at least my perception is that there's a small segment of the population that is actively interested in this, and that there's a large segment of the population that's asleep at the wheel. And the real question to me is, how do we reach the people who are asleep at the wheel, that aren't aware, and how do we effectively share with them and engage them in talking about the kinds of things we're talking about when there's things we're having a hard time figuring out how to talk about ourselves. And that's sort of the charge I would give to the committee is how do we, I mean we've had a water problem for a long time. It's been a public discussion for a long time, whether at the commission or the council. It's been a public discussion for the last 20 years, and yet for the most part the community, there's a lot of people who don't know that we're in curtailment right now.
Yeah. Thank you, David. Go ahead, Carrie.
So I think part of what you're asking is, what would this short-term outreach committee do? And
how they would do it.
And how, well, but that's, isn't the how, yeah. So there's the outreach part of the idea for getting the alternatives. We're thinking of the SAC, did you really call it that? Of the Scenarios and Alternatives Convention as primarily substantial, because it's the way you're going to get your alternatives, but it has a huge effect on outreach. So obviously the outreach people would be interested in that. There's the fact that the website committee at some point is going to sunset, and the outreach committee would be taking that over. And then, notwithstanding what Mike said, for lack of any guidance otherwise, in your Gantt chart, which I know you've all, closely perused, and it is a fine-looking Gantt chart. There's a month in December when you take time to have an open house or something and report on your recon results and why some of your alternatives were winnowed and what it taught you. So recon is not just about press releases for your ongoing meetings, unless you want it to be.
Great. So where I hope we were going is giving the charge to this subcommittee. And I think you've got some ideas now, but we maybe, whereas Erica's going to speak, I'm thinking we can maybe collect them in writing somewhere. Can you maybe jot them down? Are you capturing them?
The things that you would actually do with the outreach
Yeah, yeah. I hope it's going to start to get more concrete now.
I think the charge is, I'd rather hear from the committee.
That's what I want. Yeah, that's what I want you to write down. Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Eric.
I just actually want to disagree with you, David. I actually think our community is doing a really good job overall, and that's why we're in that 7% bracket. And I think that the outreach committee should celebrate that and celebrate the fact that the public is paying attention. And I know, like, basically all my neighbors are paying attention. Basically everybody around that I know is paying attention. There's a few people that are asleep at the wheel, but not many.
Thank you, Erica. So we're getting into the charge here. The charge is help the public understand water issues. That's a sort of the general thing. Is there anything else that you want to add to that? What else would you like to add? The website, because this new subcommittee will be taking over from the website work once it's developed by the website subcommittee. Mark?
I think it would be important to communicate to the public in an outreach effort what we're doing. So today we're meeting and we're talking about these things and highlighting those things. I don't know what's on the agenda for next month, but let's just say, like Rick suggested, we're going to have a presentation from John Ricker. We're going to discuss the factors associated with fishery. We're going to, and just kind of let people know what we're doing and invite them to get engaged. I can't imagine charging a subcommittee with the job of interpreting or condensing or consolidating what we are doing in some meaningful way that could be reduced to a simple graphic. Maybe that is a possibility, kind of create a graphic representation of what we're doing, but my sense is we should invite people and focus on what we're doing and sharing what we're doing and invite people to come and see for themselves.
Thank you, Mark. It occurs to me that you might want to consider, so where will your responsibility and your activity end, and where will the activities and the responsibility of the city staff or your consultants begin? Mike, you don't have to answer my question, Mike, but I want that to be out there.
Well, I think the most important thing that they could do, this committee could do, would be find a way to communicate to the public why this is such a complex issue. So many people think, it's an easy issue. Why don't they just do this? Sometimes they get up in front of the city council and they say it, or in front of us sometimes even. It's simple. With diametrically opposed solutions and with no understanding of why we would be, what's this risk stuff? What's this uncertainty stuff? What's this, somehow try and bring, we're not going to bring everybody up to speed, but bring much larger numbers of the public up to speed on why this is such a hard question to resolve. Because even when people have, like Rick and I have debated these kinds of things, we've come to our conclusions about these through a bunch of complexity. A lot of the people that support either of our positions got to them by one simple idea, I don't like desal, so this is what I like, or I don't, I want this thing to add. It's so obvious, you should just do this, in fact, they write these nasty letters to the paper. You guys are idiots because you haven't done the obvious thing that needs to be done. There's no obvious thing to be done. I mean, let's be clear about that. So could we communicate that to the public? And so it's a public education. It takes creativity, because how are you going to make people receptive to that idea? It's a very broad educational campaign that's not about getting them to agree to this, this, or this. It's to see what a complex water system we have and how much do we not know about what's going on, so that when we come to a conclusion, let's be positive about what we're going to do, they understand what it took to get there and why they shouldn't be cavalier about throwing our suggestion out of the water like everything else before or something. That's what I think would be really useful at this stage.
Thank you, Mike. So what we got on the wall so far is to help the public communicate, help the public understand water issues, communicate the complexity, work on the website, let the public know what the committee is actually doing, and highlight the presenters. Let them know about the agenda, there was something else that you said, which was really, and get them interested in it.
Invite them.
Yeah. Invite them.
Invite them, invite them, invite them.
Yeah, invite. So, anything else in the charge stuff, or can we go? Yes.
So in light of the conversation that happened a little bit earlier about, running up against the brick wall of community values, I don't really want to have a situation where everybody can keep their grass green or the opposite of that. Could we maybe ask the subcommittee to do some work on thinking about how and who might be engaged in helping to have that conversation in the community, and not necessarily to go and do it, but to come up with some ideas, brainstorm some ideas about how to engage that question.
This is sort of like the lifestyle. Yeah. Okay. So that's the charge. I'd like to move on unless somebody else has something burning they want to add to it. So then, the duration of it, we were talking about the recon. So that would be, like, if we do a sort of 6 months, it would keep us within the scope of a temporary committee. The scope of responsibility, we sort of discussed that as a charge. It sort of got mushed together. Who would like to do this? Who would like to be on this subcommittee?
Doug and Sue.
Doug and Sue.
And David.
I'll nominate both of them.
But we actually have somebody here who's volunteering.
Keith and Eileen for staff.
Oh, Keith and Eileen will staff it. All right. Charlie has put his hand up. Anybody else? And Peter. So we got 2 committee members so far, maybe 4.
I heard 5.
Did anybody else here have their hand up, except for Charlie and Peter? Oh, Erica. Charlie, Peter, Erica. So we got 3. That's a good group. Thank you very much. Is there anything else that? Oh, what about a name? Any special consideration about the name, or shall we just call it the Outreach Subcommittee? Recon Outreach Subcommittee. Thank you. So we've got it. Oh, we've got to go that. Yes, this is a big one for you guys. So, who are they allowed to talk to? Who should they talk to? Who should they not talk to? Should they talk to anyone?
Yeah, I definitely think that the outreach committee shouldn't talk to anybody at all.
Sarah, that's perfect.
Just talk amongst yourselves a lot. In closed doors. No, I mean, I think we'd really want a broad approach here. So it's like, with updates back to the larger committee, as you start engaging people, you'll kind of begin to maybe bring back to us suggestions of who you want to talk to. But, I mean, you're communicating at this point what we're working on. I feel perfectly comfortable allowing you to do that and kind of bringing up some of the questions that we're doing that we're processing within the meetings and stuff is appropriate.
So
I'm kind of giving a really broad
you're saying a lot
external
here.
communication to
Peter.
people. But
Peter, get the machine.
Formulated very generally, I think we should try to reach everybody in the water system and explore the different channels of outreach, which they're changing in my lifetime, so I have to adapt to the new ones.
Not Twitter, no, not Twitter.
I know, yeah, so there's a lot we have to consider, but from business to to high schoolers, or so it's really a broad range, and we shouldn't exclude anything. And this is part of a committee that there's actually some work to do, and so I would really formulate it as broad as ever possible.
So there's one, Keith wants to speak, but before we go there, one of the things that Sarah mentioned was the committee needs to be talking with presumably the media and any sort of public meeting they can find about what we're thinking about, or the things that we're challenged by. You're getting into areas that you might end up feeling uncomfortable about when you hear what was said in the meeting. I just want you to sort of challenge you to think about that. Sarah, do you want to sort of say more about what you look like you want to say?
No, I was just saying that's kind of inherent in part of this. But, I mean, if they're speaking individually at a presentation, you know, the assumption is if I answer questions that have opinions, then that's my opinion, and the rest of the committee, you know, that can be stated like we've said before, and clarified before a presentation is made. But I'm kind of slightly comfortable with having that level of discomfort in the communications outreach, because it sparks the response, and part of it is we want to hear back from the public and understand how they're reacting to what they're hearing. So it kind of, in essence, gives us that return communication that we're looking for as well.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to speak to this? Charlie?
I think it could easily become a situation that could become a public debate, and I would like to think we're going to avoid engaging the public in debate about anything that we're discussing or suggesting, or we want to invite people to participate. We want to inform people about what we've done, what we plan to do, who's going to be presenting. But I think we have to be really careful about expressing either personal opinion, because I'll tell you, it's going to become very contentious. You start giving presentations to the Lions Club or any group of business people or any group more than about 2 or 3 people, you're going to have a lot of varied opinions, and many of them emotionally charged. And it's going to be really easy. It's happened at Water Commission meetings. It happens all the time at council meetings. People feel very emotionally about things, and they want to talk about it. They want to offer their sincere thoughts and emotions. And I, for one, want to stay out of the debate realm and be a reporter more than a debater.
So reporting more than debating. Mike?
I think a lot of the job is the strategy of communication, not the particular, we don't have to sit here and decide what you're going to say, but for example, we found in the past in the city that the best way to get a hold of parents on the most environmental issues is to send stuff home with the elementary school kids. So, you know, the idea that you have to, you know, send a newsletter to parents, not necessarily. Sometimes you just work it out through the schools. We have a communications expert that is your staff. Work with him and figure out what's the best way to reach the broadest number of the public? What sectors of the public are not reached by, they don't have kids, they don't get reached by that, so you need to do something else for those folks or whatever. But that's what I'd like the committee to get into. How are we going to reach the people that right now don't think there's an issue or don't understand it, and wake them up and get them engaged in this? And that's a strategy question for what's effective ways to reach people. That's as important as what the message is, because you can have a great message and it just doesn't go, and that's why you're doing outreach. It doesn't go anywhere.
Thank you, Mike. I'm just looking at the time, and we're sort of running out of time. But do you want to? Is there anything else that we need to say to be sure that the outreach committee is not going to spring any surprises on you? Yes.
Well, I can just assure anybody. I think we are in the line what Michael said before in his role as a liaison to the public. Our role is kind of the same, just the opposite. We are there to, and the scope is pretty clear. I mean, our mission right now is to make sure people understand how complicated the whole thing is, and we are far away from having a solution. I hope everybody's far away from that, because, I mean, that's really truly where I believe in that, and so being in that commission, I can just speak to this. I don't know what the solution is today. You know, so.
Thank you. Well, I think that every month you'll have a chance to check in and see how it's going, and the committee will be able to redirect the subcommittee if necessary. So we've got our subcommittee, and I think that's all we need for this outreach discussion at the moment. And I'd like to move on unless anybody has something burning they want to say. The next item is the Strategies and Alternatives Convention. And we have a little over half an hour to talk about this. So there are a series of things we want to get to.